Hi, and welcome to Armchair Updates football/baseball version. We're joined with Sam this week, and Alan is here as usual. Sam, I don't have anything that I could probably embarrass myself with saying. I think New Zealand is on the same island as Australia with where you live. I'm pretty confident with where Florida is. Have you always lived there, or what was your life story?
Yeah, I was born and raised in the panhandle of Florida, a little place called Destin, a great vacation spot, white beaches, green water, whole 9 yards. Went to Coast Guard Academy in New London, Connecticut, served in the Caribbean, got out, came back to Destin and wound up moving to Pensacola, which is about an hour away. And I've been in Pensacola since 2013, so a lot of time in Florida.
Okay. And I did not get the 90-minute. I got the 60-minute. This is all they could provide for local liquor shop.
The 90's hard to come by. It's not cheap. It's maybe $4 a piece, but it's good stuff. The 60's great too, though. The 90's a lot thicker alcohol, but they're both great. I like the Dogfish Head for sure. Tonight I've got Guinness Nitro Cold Brew for in between Glenmorangie La Santa, which is a sherry cask scotch. And I have a Pinhook Rye here that I'll imbibe in as well.
That's a lot to get through in an hour.
Yeah. So I don't smoke in my office, but I have an Oliva Melanio Maduro Torpedo as well that I'll probably take care of later tonight.
I like a good Maduro. That's pretty much exclusively when I have a stick. It's usually a Maduro. That is my preferred wrapper. I like a good.
And we've got
my pastor gave me one last night, and I forgot to ask him the name of it. It was about the best cigar I've ever smoked. So I'll have to find out what that was.
Yeah.
And we've got a wide variety of backdrops here. We discussed this in the pre-show. Sam is in his library, I believe, and I can see a reflection back there of some baseball game.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. It's the Mariners and the Rangers.
Okay.
That is also what I am watching, actually. We happen to be watching the same game.
And I am outside on my deck. So
you're watching your grass grow, literally. You're watching your grass grow, counting down the time where you can water it.
Yes. I have 11 minutes on my last water timer, so in 11 minutes, I'm going to be running about 20 feet away, turning off the nozzle, and be done for the night. So you gave us a little background. Like, how old are you, Sam, by the way?
I turned 38 last Tuesday, a week ago.
Okay. And I turned 38 last March, so I'll turn 39 this March upcoming. And we talked about this. What?
We had a lot of 1983 babies in the league, so yeah. Future for fantasy baseball.
Yes, it is. That means the future is still hopefully going to hang on for a little while. We talked about this in the pre-show, and I said that I think you're one of the only people in this Armchair Network that may have a story or knows Duke personally. Is there anything you want to share about the great founder of the Armchair Network?
Yeah, well, Duke and I went to the Coast Guard Academy together, and he was in my brother's class, which was 2 years ahead of mine. And the way it works is when you're going into your junior year, you are the cadre or the drill sergeant for the new guys. So Duke was actually my drill sergeant. He was the Yankee 3 platoon commander, if I recall correctly. So I was X-ray 2. So we weren't directly interacting on a daily basis, but we had plenty of interactions. The guy is formidable in stature and is scary as hell. So I knew him by name and not by face, because you're always at attention, not looking at who's yelling at you. And we played baseball together up there. And I remember the first time I met him somewhat informally, he was in his room with a baseball bat, and he explained to me why they call him Duke as opposed to his real name, Mike. And obviously the baseball player Duke Snyder there. So.
Okay.
Big,
I mean,
big 6'4" guys standing there with a baseball bat. That's how I want to meet him. Yeah.
and where did you say? So where were you stationed in all this when all this happened? Can you say that?
Yeah, that was in New London, Connecticut, at the Coast Guard Academy.
Okay. Okay.
Like, West Point or Annapolis or the Air Force Academy is just for the Coast Guard. It's about 1/4 the size of the other services, maybe 1/5. There's about 800 cadets in the Corps. At least there were back then. I think there's a few more now. It's a lot smaller.
Okay. Oh, I didn't even realize. Adam has already made a comment. No hat, Alan. Usually, I don't know. Oh, and so Sam, on the right side it says private chat and comments.
Yep, I see it now.
Okay. Yeah, and I didn't realize that. So you can see if people are making live comments while we're going.
Yeah, I was
just Adam. You don't need to worry about it. It's just Adam.
Hey, we gotta make sure we take care of our faithful listeners because we got to make this audience grow.
There's only a small handful, so.
I think what we can do is the biggest anticipation probably for most people with this is, Sam, do you want to reveal the new minor league rankings for the baseball teams?
Yeah.
Or any changes? You kind of teased that.
Yeah, we can start with that. So what I did is I went through, when I did the original rankings, the contracts weren't correct for a lot of the players, the ones that have been called up and so on. They hadn't been updated. So I went ahead, hey, Jeff, and I went ahead and took every minor on the roster, whether they were in an MLB slot, whether they were in the minor league slot, whether they were a pro guy that was down in the minors or a new guy just drafted, and I just threw everything into the hat. What I did this time around is I went through and only used the 16th contracts. So anyone that's been called up and anyone that was a major leaguer on a first contract that's got a minors flag was excluded from this time around, because that's more accurate for who's actually going to get kept, I think. And the methodology for scoring this is, let me just pull it up to remind myself because I've got a lot of numbers on here. You guys can still see me, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that this wasn't in the way.
So just to be clear, this update is pure minor leagues, is what you're saying.
Yeah, this is pure minor leagues. Okay. Yeah. So I just let the market decide the pricing or the value, and went ahead and took the Fantrax own percentage for all the players that are at the 16th level or 16th contract, and then I totaled up. So I added the total percentage that you own, the average percentage that you own, the standard deviation of the sample size that we have here, and then the amount of money that you're spending on your minor league program. Again, 16ths only. So what that does is, by taking total points, that tells us just how big the program is. So someone that's got 25 points, even if it's a 25-point player, is obviously probably not going to have as good a luck as somebody with 200 points, even if they don't even have one 25-point player. So total points matters. Average points matters because that penalizes people who have a star or two, and then a whole bunch of scrubs, which also the standard deviation helps out there too. So basically, if you don't have a good distribution of talent, if all of your minors is resting on one player, there's a penalty for that. Whereas if you have a lot of players of the same caliber, a lot better chances of getting something usable out of that, so it helps you. Obviously, the cash component is important because if somebody's spinning categories, which basically means I weighted them for compared to the other population or other samples in population, and I gave the total score 35% weight, the average score 35% weight, and then the standard deviation and cash are only 15% apiece, so they don't hurt you too bad. So it really comes down to who's got the most and who's got the best average, with the money and the standard deviation coming in there a little bit. So without further ado on that, what I do is I then set the lowest team in terms of value equal to 0, and I set the top team equal to 100, and then there's a scale rating between 0 and 100 for everybody else based on where they fall. So previously we had, I'll just read the top 3. We had Pirates at 100, with the Rangers at 91, and the Braves at 88. When we went ahead and took out those players that have been called up and the majors that were sitting in minor slots and so on, we didn't have a lot of shuffling at the bottom. Cubs, Padres, Marlins rounded out the bottom 3, with the Rockies actually taking a little bit of a dip from number 5 to number 4. Followed by the White Sox, the Jays, the Reds, the Mariners, the Rays, the Astros, and the Twins, all in the 30s.
So this is the bottom part, right? First.
Yep, we're going bottom to top here. The Angels and Phillies at 42, Giants at 48. Athletics 55, Tigers 57, Red Sox 58. So those were some slight changes from before. Some guys went down a few points, some guys went up a few points. The Phillies stayed even at 42 under both systems. So that's pretty positive for Adam there. We had the Mets, Royals, and Brewers all 3 tied at 65, with the Yankees at 68 and the Nats at 69. Now, the biggest fall in this whole thing was the Rangers, who dropped from 91 to 70. So that was a big drop from second place to about 10. The Cardinals are at 75, which was an improvement for them of about 10%. The Guardians at 83, which was also a nice bump for them. The Orioles stayed about the same at 86. The Diamondbacks jumped from 71 to 86, so they were the biggest up mover. That was really good for them. The Dodgers went from 86 to 88 and took our third place spot. Duke and his Pirates fell from 100 to 95.
Oh, God.
Big jump from 88 to 100. Now, that might sound good for the Braves, and I think it is good for the Braves. They've got some incredible talent in their minor league system, but they are the team spending $103. So with this system, I did not penalize the amount of money spent as much, and the reason is most of the players on 16th contracts are at $1. So almost everyone is about spending the same. Okay, you can only take, I think, 3/16 in the draft. So we only had about 100 players drafted for more than $1. So there's not and a lot of those players have already been called up. So they're not even in the population anymore. So in the previous ranking, I weighted money a lot more because you got to pay for what you get. And if you're paying for something that's not worth a lot, you're going to get penalized. In this system, because all of the money was very comparable and the standard deviation across the board from team to team was very small, or the variance was very small, I didn't penalize people who spent a lot of money as much. And that's the reason for the Braves making that big jump. But they do have the talent. They absolutely have some incredible talent in the minors. So I think it's a well-deserved first place. So well done to the Braves.
All right, I'll ask one question about it real quick. My timer just went off, and I'm going to turn off the water. So I know that there are some teams that do have more than 20, like
yeah, I think there were
players.
2, and they were only 2 over.
Okay.
I could have removed their bottom 2. Each of those teams did own some 0% owned guys, so I could have thrown them out. But I don't like to make decisions for owners. I'm not going to assume what they're going to drop and what they're not going to drop. So I didn't feel like a couple players out of 600 players was really that big of an impact. So I just
probably wouldn't have made that much of a difference. And
yeah,
those,
for sure.
if you don't like you kind of did go and sit and take a look at everybody's minor leagues, it is easy to lose track of just how good some of these teams look, and not way down the line, but like probably pretty close down the line. And since we're on the Braves, the reason he spent so much on those minor leagues, really four guys. He's got Torque at 20-something, 23. He's got Luciano in the high teens. He's still got Gore in the high 20s. And there was a fourth guy that I was just looking at that now I can't remember. But he's got a fourth pretty expensive minor leaguer. Oh, Bobby Witt Jr., $20.
Yep.
Bobby Witt Jr.
Yeah,
So it makes sense to when you look at the top end talent, even though it is expensive, like you said, it is, or at least as far as we can see, appears to be legitimately valuable, at least as far as minor leaguers go. Those guys are all pretty high. And Gore's taken a bit of a dip lately, but he's been really bad in AAA.
And if you take out his top four players that we just mentioned, he has 398 points of total ownership, which dwarfs the entire league. I think the next highest is 320. Yeah, 320 and 312 for the Dodgers and the Pirates. 351 for the Diamondbacks. I missed that one. But he's 50 points plus above the number two guy. If you took those four out and they graduated, in September or something, so that he didn't have them going into the off season, he would still be at 200 points, which would put him in the top half of the league. And it would also unload all that salary. So I think this is a system that not only looks good now, but will continue to look pretty good.
Especially if you're the Braves.
Yeah.
So we can I kind of wanted to split this up, football, baseball. One last question I can say for baseball. I had you pull up your roster. Is there any final thoughts you want to give on your baseball team, the direction you see it heading, and any positives or negatives you want to say you took away from this year, maybe mistakes or things you're proud of yourself that you did this year?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to share something that might be useful to the league, and it might not be useful to the league. I've never played in a 30-teamer before. I have played in contract leagues before, but not 30-teamer contract leagues. I do not know what inflation will look like going forward. I know what it looks like in non-30-team leagues, your standard 12 to 18 type style leagues. And so I ran a pretty substantial analysis on what expected inflation is. One moment. My 12-year-old is letting me know he just ate 25 wings from B-Dubs. So for me.
That's an accomplishment.
Yeah. But I made some assumptions. I'm going to share this with you guys. If I know we did a poll, how many people are you going to keep? I haven't thought that far, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty. This spreadsheet is about 4 pages long-ish. And basically, I'll just walk through the thought process on it, and then I'll share the final conclusion to it. And maybe that'll be worth something to you or not. We're all going to have essentially 600 minors, and they're all going to be at least $1, more than likely $1 moving forward. So $600 is already out of the $7,800 pot before we draft any major leaguers. Then we're going to have call-up players that we get to keep without extending a contract if they're on the 2021 contract, right? So I made some assumptions, and I assumed that 20% of players out of that 600 were going to get called up. So that's about 120 or 4 per team. I don't know how close I am on any of this stuff. It was just kind of guesstimated. And then I guesstimated that half of those would get some sort of a contract extension for 1 year. And about 3/4 of that half, so 37.5% of what got called up this year would continue into a second contract year. So that'd be 45 players. Working its way down to where ultimately 19 of the call-ups from this year will get a 5-year extension at some point. So that's not a crazy big number. That's like less than 4% of all minor leaguers getting kept on a 5-year deal. I think it's going to be a lot higher than that because they're so cheap, but we'll see. There's a lot of risk-averse people in this league, as we'll talk about later, to those long-term contracts. But I felt like assuming that 19 of the 600 would continue. Yeah, I see you, Tony. 19, I felt like that was a pretty comfortable number. And what happens when you play that out over 5 years with the inflation of the minor league contracts is you wind up having $1,800 spent on minor league people currently in our minor league system or that will be in the minor league system by 2027. So now we've taken out $1,800 of the $7,800, and we haven't even paid for a current major leaguer yet. I then made some assumptions on what kind of extensions we were going to get out of our major league contracts. I assumed that 50% of players would receive some sort of a contract. I think that's probably going to be in the ballpark, give or take, a dime. And so with that assumption that 50% are going to get some kind of contract, a lot of those would be 1 year or 2 year deals. So I assume that half of them would be 1 year deals, and then 20% of them would be 2 year deals, and so on and so on. And what I worked that up to be is that 238 players will get a contract, finishing with 26 in the 5 year range. So only about 10% of people getting a contract are going to get a max contract, and the rest are going to have something less. I also assume that the average price of that contract will be $7.50. The reason being the average price at draft was $10 a player. We had 26 slots, $260, so $10 a player. I think that most people are going to tend to keep cheaper players than more expensive players. I know there's some high ticket guys like Acuna that went back into the pot. So we're going to see maybe a bias towards cheaper players in terms of the contracts. So rather than have a $10 average, I assumed a $7.50 average. But as we all know, they'll have $2 inflation, so really $9.50 moving into next year as an average. And then I just rolled that up for each population that advanced in contract from $9.50 to $11.50 and so on. And I ran those numbers out year over year with all the players being kept, the same ratio being renewed on 1 year contracts, but fewer people keeping long-term guys moving forward. It's kind of all the 5 year guys are going to be taking on minor league contract 5 years, or they're already getting a 5 year deal in the first year. So I grew the long contracts very slowly, and I grew the 1 year contracts at the same rate. And what I came up with is that we're going to see about 15% inflation in the draft for this upcoming year. And we're going to see about 30% inflation in year 2. And that's pretty much in line with the 12 and 18 team leagues that I played in before. You might see Mike Trout go for like $45 in the first year draft, and then that guy's not competing, so he throws him back. And one guy drafted well and has got all the money to spend. I'm looking at you, Duke, and you spend $52 on him or something like that because you've got plenty of money to burn. Or even $60 on them or something. So we see some of that inflation come in. The thing is, after the second year, I'm projecting a 30% decrease year over year on inflation as all the contracts get tied up. And so what that means is the third year is going to be the Wild West in the auction. I think the next 2 years are going to be pretty tame. It's going to be hard to get talent. You're going to have to overpay for your talent. But because of the prediction that a lot of guys are risk averse on those long-term contracts, we're going to see a lot of talent entering the pool. We're going to see a lot of money freed up. And in the third year, money's going to be flowing again. But we're not going to have a lot of positions to fill because we've got a lot of minor leaguers there. And so we're going to be able to get essentially who we want at that point if we've been patient and structured right. So with that in mind, I'll answer Tony's question now. And that was what I see myself doing. Yeah.
So it was not a question. I was raising my hand as I am the risk averse. So I apologize for thinking I was interrupting you. Like I am definitely.
No.
Full disclosure, I'm never going to extend anyone past 3 years. But go ahead. Sorry.
I understand that. Yeah, no. Your original question was, what am I going to do with my team?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought you meant that, like, sorry, I thought you meant that I was like raising my hand. No, I was just raising my hand to say, yup, I am the risk-averse crowd. I'm not going to extend anyone. I wasn't trying to interrupt your flow or anything like that. But go ahead and then continue with this.
Yeah, so I'll answer it by telling you what I did very poorly, what went very wrong for me, and what I won't do again. So there's the 10 stat. There's no such thing as a prospect pitcher, right? And I'm like the antithesis of that. I buy as many prospect pitchers as I can because they break like crazy, right? And so I want volume to hit it well on 1 or 2. And so I drafted guys like Mize, Patino, Debbie Garcia, Louis Deal. Who else did I have? Brady Singer.
You had Gore? I think you might have had Gore.
I had Gore.
Or no,
I traded for Gore. I had a bunch of guys like that fall into that category. And Matt Manning, they let me down. They didn't mature as fast as I wanted them to mature. They didn't do great when they came up and had opportunities, with the exception of 1 or 2 of those guys. I thought I was going to hit an ace or 2 and have a 5-year extension on the next Clayton Kershaw, and then just dump the rest back and re-sign them for less because they flopped and have another shot at it. I did that strategy's fine, and I don't super regret that. But what I did is I drafted 15 or 16 pitchers in the draft on purpose, and then I traded a lot of them away. Michael Fulmer and Yanni Chirinos and guys like that were cheap gambles, Mike Minor and so on, because I thought my young guys were going to carry me. And so I traded for bats, and I got Eloy Jimenez. I had the Astros guy with the knee issues. Why am I blanking here?
Alvarez.
I'm wanting to say
Jordan.
Yeah. Jordan Alvarez. I had Ketel Marte. I had Jose Ramirez, Sal Perez.
That is nothing what your team looks like right now.
No, not at all. And what happened was I realized a few weeks in that my pitchers were not going to perform. I traded my vets away. I kept my young guys. And so I decided to be first mover on the rebuild and deal my bats as fast as I could before people started getting saturated. I hate rebuilding. I love winning. It kills me to have won 5 games or 4 games, whatever it is that I have. But I think I put myself in a good position to cut a lot of my team, to have a lot of cash in the draft. And as we talked about, there's going to be a lot of players available in the next 24 months, draft-wise, 30 months, draft-wise. So I think within 2 years I can be competing, maybe a fringe playoff team next year if I get lucky in the draft. And so what I wouldn't do again is I wouldn't draft the younger pitchers and trade the veterans away. I would keep the veterans so that when the younger pitchers didn't perform, my vets could match my bats. And I had to give up some of the vets to get some of the bats that I had. I didn't have that whole team of players that I just listed all at one time.
Right. Yeah.
But I had Luis Castilla. I had Framber Valdez. I had Ryu. I had a lot of talent, and I just decided that I wasn't going to win it, and I'm playing to win, so I was going to rebuild first. So what I'll do differently next time, and what I'm going to do with my team, I'm going to be a max extender, I think, on somewhere between 5 to 9 guys, which is not Tony-esque, I understand. But there's some guys that I'm pretty happy about that are cheap, that, like Nico Horner, for example, $6 player. He is not a $15 player. I'm probably not going to max extend him, but I could see that 3-year deal to get me through these first few years of inflation and then dump him back in that magical third year that I think we're going to have. I traded away Adolis Garcia. I was planning on a max extension on him. A lot of my other players I've traded down to 2021s or 16ths on purpose to prevent myself from being in position to have to offer long contracts until I see what I can spend money on next year. Because the problem with a long contract is once you lock it in, it impacts your budget for a long time. And you don't know what is going to be available in the draft in 2024, 2025 that you're going to be wishing, yeah, $10 on Nico is a great deal, but look at what I could spend $10 on over here, you know. So because of the unknown, I might be a little cautious, but there'll be some max extensions for me. Probably a lot of 2 and 3 year extensions, though, at least.
There's a few things I took away from there. Is number one, the 2 players you mentioned personally. I think you acquired both of them from me, or you gave one of them to me and I gave one of them to you. I believe I just acquired Adolis, or it's Adolis, right? Is that you're a Rangers fan? Garcia. Yeah. He used to be a Cardinal too, right, Alan? I think.
Yeah, one of those guys in the Cardinal system that they got rid of and then blew up somewhere else. Yeah.
And I think I traded you Nico, because you still have Nico?
I do have Nico. You didn't trade me Nico for Adolis. I got Nico in another trade. Let me just pull the transaction log up real quick and look at the trades for me. It'll take me
quick update. While you're doing that as well, Corbin Burns has a no through 4. Mark let us know in the Discord. Corbin Burns does have a no through 4, yes.
I watched that instead of the Mariners Rangers.
It was the Jeter Downs trade?
Yeah, I got corner for Patino, Dalbec, and Downs, and then you gave me Downs back for Adolis.
Yep. That sounds fair. Is there anything else you wanted to say? Like, I mean, you did mention, unfortunately, probably a negative, which probably a lot of us beat ourselves up more than we can. This beast of a league, I tell you what, there's so many layers of it that I think we could all beat ourselves up on it. Is there anything you're proud of yourself about?
What am I proud about? I'm pretty proud of the minor system that I built because I didn't have this going into the draft. I passed. I was not a very prospect knowledgeable owner, and I actually traded away or passed a lot of my draft picks. So to have a relatively strong minors, I know it took a hit in the recent deal, but I'm a 70 owner. That's top third. I think I'm number 10 on the list. That was built from scratch. I think if we did this same process at the beginning of the year on bottom 3, easily bottom 3. So that's pretty cool to have built that. I do like some of the performances that I've gotten from players like Jesus Sanchez. I love getting Lewis Brinson, Victor Caratini. I'm just looking at guys that I'll extend. Probably even Renato Nunez, even though he's hardly played this year. He's probably going to get some extension from me. And then on the pitching side, I've got Matt Manning, Mitch Keller, Chris Bubich, Josiah Gray, Brady Singer, Luis Gill, that are probably going to see some money come their way. And
that's a solid. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm proud that I was able to put that together after having really had a miserable year, to be coming out of it and saying, hey, I've got some potential and it's affordable potential. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the attention that I put into the league. I have a hard time playing more than one league. I'm in another league that I've played in for now 11 years with the same group of guys for the most part, and I'm competing for the championship. I'm in the playoffs essentially in that. If I win one game or my opponent loses one matchup in the next 2 weeks, I'm in and I'll have a shot. So I put a lot of attention and focus into that league, and I was able to not let this league go by the wayside because I really love the 30-team concept. I love the contract concept, and I'll put in a plug for my Ultimate Fantasy Franchise League that I'd like to put together. This league is what has inspired me to continue with that work because I've been working on that for about 7 or 8 years, putting together some of those concepts. So I'm in a process of trademarking the logo, building the website. I have a developer up in Virginia Beach that's doing spreadsheet construction for me so that everything is automated in terms of contract offering and all that kind of stuff. And I met with a guy last night to work on a GUI for it, a guided graphic user interface to interact with it. If we can mask that over Fantrax somehow, that'd be really cool. I don't know if we can or not, but we're going to look at it. I think it's been a great league. I'm very appreciative to Duke and all you guys for what you've done this year. It's been a blast, kept me engaged. The chat's great, all the different channels, everything's fantastic. So really enjoyed it. And obviously the pod, whatever you call this, podcast is great.
That was Hulk Hogan-esque.
The praise to come my way, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, how cool is it? I'm looking at third-party money coming into the league for the UFF, and it's going to take stuff like this to get third-party sponsorship or ad activity or whatever going into it. And so to just see this be possible and be attractive to folks is great. So,
if anybody that eventually watches this, or if it's just Adam watching this now, if you didn't catch like when Sam was talking about it in the chat, it's a future league that he wants to run, and I think that we'll probably just sit and do like a separate pod when it gets more to be time to like really be talking about it. But super interesting, talking about real money auctions. So if you bid $52 on Acuna, you're paying 52 real world dollars for Acuna. And from what I understand, Sam, you want to incorporate things like ticket prices and stadium effects and like all that kind of OOTP stuff, but in real life.
It's got stadiums and coach fans. It's got arbitration. Your draft picks don't guaranteed to sign with you. Depending on if you offer below, at, or above slot, there's a random number generated that will determine whether they sign with you. There's the coolest things, man. And I've spent years developing this to make it look and smell and feel very much like a real world franchise, and have the contracts make sense for what a real world player would do. No 20 is going to sign a 10-year contract necessarily unless it's big money. But he'll take a 3-year deal to get him out of the minor league contract that he's stuck on, so that he can be 27 when it's the market with a 10-year deal or whatever. 40-year-olds want to play the game too, and so there's decreasing contracts, there's increasing contracts, there's all kinds of cool stuff that's all age-based. So we can do another talk another day.
Oh yeah, we will.
I'm looking forward to it. It's a combination of points and roto, all that kind of stuff in terms of the scoring outs. It's great.
Yeah, very cool. Very exciting.
Three questions rolled into one that you will be able to easily answer in 15 seconds. Are you accepting applications, and are you using like real major league team names? Are the Cubs available if you are using real team names? And if the Cubs are available, where can I send you my check to lock up the Chicago Cubs name?
Yes, I'm not taking applications. That'll be when the website launches. There will be an application on the website. It is a $1,000 deposit, more than likely, for a franchise. That does not go anywhere. That is to make sure that you run your franchise properly. If you exit the league properly and sell your franchise to a new owner, you get your $1,000 back. But if you're not paying your salaries or fees or whatever, then that's going to come out of your deposit to get a new owner and to take over the bad contracts you wrote. There will be an application process. I will be pretty particular because one bad owner will blow the league up with a 10-year contract. The wrong player. Obviously, you guys, I would love to have all y'all in the league, but we're going to police that very closely. And I'll let you know when that site goes live and the applications can go in for sure.
And are you going to simulate the ABL with using, since it is 30 teams, are you going to just simulate the divisions and using team names?
It will be major league franchises. Yeah, it'll be a major league franchises. Yeah.
So will there be a chance that somebody could potentially sell their franchise for a profit, or would they just get their deposit back always?
Yeah, everyone owns the rights to their franchise. They can sell it for $1 or $10,000, whatever it's worth. The way that the payouts work out, it doesn't pay out 100% every year. Everyone is eligible for 100% to be paid out. But if you have a bad coach, if you miss your rotisserie scoring or whatever it might be, you forfeit part of your winnings, and that stays in the pot and rolls over to next year. And so the league payout grows over time. So you sign guys to contracts based on a payout in 2021, but we're in 2027 and the payout's double. Your franchise is obviously worth a lot. So yeah, you can sell it and the money's yours. You own the rights to that franchise.
Very cool.
Yep.
I just the idea alone is like something that I feel like I've been trying to get with games like OOTP and everything, but I want that dog. I want that real world risk. God damn it.
Yeah, exactly. I play Stratomatic 365. I play OOTP. They're great games. I enjoy them, but there's nothing like watching, I think it was Dozer hit a grand slam one day that made me lose and miss the playoffs by 1 point. The bases were loaded. The game was tied, and there were 2 outs. So if he did anything, literally, other than hit a home run, I would advance. And the dude did it. And you can't get that in a video.
No, you cannot.
So
yeah.
I want the real-world link. I want to be studying real prospects, not some statistical thing that says his curveball is a 79 and his movement's 56. What the heck is that? I want to be able to watch Matt Manning pitch and be like, that guy can play. I want to own him.
To shout out to our president of the fan. Oh, sorry. We have the president of the fan club does have a question. So the $1,000 entry does not get used for contracts. Do you want to answer that there, Sam?
That is correct. That is held in a secure account. We use LeagueSafe for whatever makes the most sense fee-wise. I'm still exploring that piece. If you fail to pay your contracts, if you don't engage in the league, if you're not following the rules and you just abandon us, then your $1,000 will go to paying out your contracts so that a new owner will want to take the team. But the idea is that it's just held there in place that you can get whenever you're ready to leave the league. Absolutely.
I wouldn't recommend putting it in Apple stock necessarily, but we're talking about having 30 grand sitting around. Put it in a money market or something and let that shit work for us, huh?
It will more than likely be interest bearing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, super cool, man. I mean, this is obviously something that's going to be very complex, and you're going to want 30 owners with like a very precise understanding of your rules and everything. So I like what you say about the application and the policing process and the vetting process being pretty rigorous.
And the last thing before we hijack the podcast, it's supposed to be about football, right? Which we can go to. It's probably going to have a soft opening in 2022, meaning we're going to put the $1,000 deposit in. We're going to play the entire league as if it was real money, but every dollar is 1 penny. And the whole league reboots at the end of the year. That way everyone can see and feel how everything works. Now the whole year doesn't go to waste. The winner gets, say, a ballpark upgrade, or they get first pick in the coaching draft, or they get, to pick an extra roto category to win more money for the endurance of the league. So you're playing for something, but it's not going to let somebody get in here, not understand how it works, get into July, have a lot of money on the line, and be really ticked off because they're screwed.
Right.
Everybody's going to get a reboot year, but it's not playing for nothing. So I call it a soft opening, and I think that's going to work out well. We'll work out all the accounting. You'll get a bill for $2.13, not $213 for the team. So on. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, very excited for that league.
I just want to say, Sam is such a numbers guy. We had an hour to an hour and a half. We are just literally hitting 45 minutes on the nuts. right
Well,
now.
we already broke down the entire football league, so we don't need to spend a ton of time on football, you know. So I think, I mean, if it was me, we could talk for another, you know, hour just about this league that he wants to set up. I'm so hyped for the potential for this thing. It's going to be so cool.
Well, we can jump into
I just wanted to do a shameless self plug, just for me. I've switched over to Blue Moon, and the reason I have, and both of you are Sam's Club members, which I appreciate because I know Sam's been vocal about it. I know I just switched over Alan. Case of these for $9, 24 bottles for $9.
That's insane.
So now continue.
Yeah, that sounds more like a plug for Sam's Club than it does for you. But
well, that's for me, though, because it affects me. It's my wife's job. So yes, it's, you know, however you want to say it. I just wanted to give, you know, whenever we want to switch over to football, I wanted to give a few minutes for football, at least for Sam to go over his roster. He had some power rankings, but we can get there like 10, 15 minutes or an hour or whatever. But I know Sam did work on power rankings for football, so I wanted him to have some time for those and his roster if he wanted to say anything. But if you, I mean, we don't have to close up. Is there anything else baseball-wise?
No, I think we're pretty good with the baseball. I could talk baseball all day, and I know that there's some folks interested in the football side of this podcast. So maybe we let them know at minute 45 we crossed over into the football conversation, so you can ignore all that boring sports stuff, right?
Well, then the baseball people who just are baseball only can quit at 45. Hopefully they keep going, but yeah, continue on. Sorry.
Yeah, Adam will keep going.
Yeah. So for this, what I did is I did a lot of research, well, some research. I don't say a lot, maybe 4 or 5 articles. It wasn't a big deal on the standard deviation distribution of points per position. So standard deviation of a quarterback is close to 10. Standard deviation of a wide receiver is 7.26. Running back is like 7.52, something like that. So I wanted to see if I could predict the variance of people's scores based on the projections that Fantrax has for them. Ultimately, because we all kind of use the same positions, unless you go in and actually study standard deviation, which some places have available, but the specific player's performance and input that, it wasn't really going to be helpful. So I threw that out. And all I did was took a simple average of the best starting lineup for each team, totaled that up, and then I went in and I next took the top 15 players, including the starting lineup. So basically the top 5 or so bench players as well. And I did the same thing that I did in the minor league system, where we took standard deviation and an average, and then we built what's called the Z-score. Getting into Joe's territory now, but built this model out that essentially rated 0 to 100 the strength of the average performance of a team, and then with the bench accounted for. And then I averaged those two together, which double counted the starters, but that's okay because we're going to play our starters more than we don't play our starters. And came up with a power ranking based on that. And I actually played with a matrix that predicted win percentages week over week, and went in and pulled the schedule and looked at the percentage chance that people had to win in any given week playing a different team. That's just a lot of work, and I know we're going to make changes to the roster and all that kind of stuff. So maybe we'll do that on a weekly basis moving forward when I'm doing, 5 matchups or whatever it is, not a whole season's worth. Right. But without further ado, the power ranking. So
is this bottom to top?
This is bottom to top, and it weights the starters probably at about an 80% value, and then the bench at about a 20% value, which I think is fair. There are a few nuances where someone might have like 4 starting quarterbacks, and obviously they can only play 2 of them. Even if one gets hurt, they're still only playing the third one. There's a bye week, they're still only playing the third one. So they might get a little bit of an edge because they drafted 4 quarterbacks. But what I found was the teams that did that really were low on their 5th running back and so on. And so it wasn't helping them out. The numbers actually came in really close for a lot of the teams, which is what I would expect them, day one of the draft. Pretty good. And I'm going to throw a caveat here for Josh and Squibb. They are the bottom team. And I think they know they're the bottom team because I think they drafted with more future in mind because they seem really savvy, like they know who these players are. I think early on, 5th round or something, they took, I think his name is Ayers. He's out for the year, and they're spending a 5th round pick on him. But he's going to be great for him in the future. So they made some moves like that. They know
the running back.
Yeah, the running back, exactly.
Sorry.
Torn Achilles, I think. I had him targeted. I wasn't going to spend a 5th round pick on him. I think that's where they took him. That's going to pay dividends for them in the future, but not this year. So this year they came in at our 0 on the scale. And the next team is Chud. And I don't know any of these owners, so I don't have any. That's you, okay. I don't know who owns these teams.
No.
When I do this, I actually blind out. When I do this, I blind out the team, so I'm not biased in any way when I'm playing.
Hey, yeah, no, that's how it should be.
Team in, and I don't know who these teams are, anyways, or who these owners are. So Chud is the next up team. It's a big jump from 0, though. It's 42. So that's
the perfect
number. That's not a bad number. You got hurt because you have no depth. Your depth score was a 21. Your starters were a 63. And so without looking at the specifics of it, obviously the top 5 on your bench just don't compare to what other people have on their bench. Maybe you went with rookies or something like that for long term. I don't know the exact strategy you took, but that's where you fell. That gives you playing around something like a 10% chance against the number 1 team and a 16% chance against the number 2 team to pull a victory out. And it just gets better from there. You're probably about a 40% chance to beat some teams, and if you're playing Josh, you're better than 50%. So probably going to be a rough year, I guess, sub 500 at a 42 ranking there. But again, maybe you had a strategy there that's going to pay off down the road. The team is called My Team. It's not my team. It's the team, My Team. They got a 51.
I believe that's Vince.
Okay.
So that's a nice jump. That's a 25% increase over 42 to get to 51 almost. So that's a pretty good jump. There's a big cluster of us. There's kind of like 3 tiers to this league. And this is kind of like the bottom of the next tier. So my team also had no bench. They were 68 for starters, which is pretty good actually, but a 33 on depth, not great. The next one was Bulldogs at 53. They had the second lowest starters crowd at 39, but their depth was 67. So very strong bench. That plays well in fantasy football, as we all know, with matchups and bye weeks and injuries. That really helps. So they, on any given week, Alan, you or my team could easily beat them, but over the course of the season, they're probably going to do better because of the bench, is what I'm projecting there. Next up is Dalvin.
Sorry.
Say what?
Bulldogs and Allen are in our division. I'm in Allen's division. So Bulldogs will be a 2 matchup. Because that is
Okay.
Dom. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right. You got a little wind coming through there, so we're catching like every 3rd word, but I caught it.
Yeah.
We're in the
Okay.
I think you were saying it was an
division.
Yeah, I'm going to play him twice because we're in the same division. Yeah.
I apologize for that. So.
That's all right. So next up, we have Dalvin Cookin at 54. Very, very even team, 58 starters, 69 depth, so that was good. That was one of the things that I found as I went through the league. There's some top-end starting lineups for sure, but there's also a lot of depth on the weaker and middle teams. So I think we've got a very competitive league overall. And Dalvin's a good example of that. Not tops for the starters, but really good depth. Next up is Curve the Enthusiasm with a 56. So 53, 51, 53, 54, 56 rounds out that middle tier, if you will. He's the opposite of Dalvin. He's 63 on starters, 49 on depth. So very respectable on both. Almost 50% or better on both of them. Next up is the beginning or the bottom of the next tier, and we have Run CMC. Woo! Coming in there with a 73. My starting lineup is a 61, which is pretty low. That means any given week, I'm a pretty easy team to beat at 61. We just talked about teams at 63, 58, 68. Chud, you're at 63. Your starting lineup even came out better than mine.
You got no quarterback, man. You got no second quarterback.
He does. He has two quarterbacks. No, you do. I looked at your roster today. You have two, but you have it triple handcuffed. You have the backup and the backup to the backup in Indianapolis. Like, he has the Colts on lockdown.
But I have 5 running
so go ahead,
backs
sir.
in the first 5 picks.
Yeah, stud running backs. Yeah,
and so I'm only playing one quarterback more than likely, especially to start the year with Wentz likely out. So it's a weaker lineup in a 2-quarterback start league for sure, but the depth at wide receiver and running back really helped. I had an 84 for depth. It was the second highest score. So, 5 big backs, couple good receivers. I can't play them all at once, but if there's injuries, I'm going to be okay. So I would probably say I'm at about where the 500 teams will start. So I probably guess I go in the ballpark of 500. Above me is Chubb at 75, so just a couple points above me. Chubb has a 92 starting lineup, which is really high, but a 58 depth, which is still really respectable. So that's a strong team there, and the teams are going to get really crazy strong here moving up. Moonman, 82. He starts the bottom of the next tier. Maybe he's kind of in the top of my tier, maybe bottom of the next tier. I'd say he's top of my tier maybe. 82 with an 89 starting lineup and a 74 depth. Both great numbers. Guy did great on the draft. Above him is Islands at 86. And let me tell you something. They're the 100 starting lineup. The Islands came out with the best starting lineup.
That's my dad, and he doesn't know shit about football.
Well, that just proves that football drafts is you can just draft a fucking starting lineup. And then
it's like it really depends on where you're going in the draft, because I think more so than like baseball, because there's so many fewer positions that you're drafting in football. Like, it really matters if you're catching the beginning or ends of runs of things, or at least you perceive it to be that way. Because just to pause for a minute, if I would have went more the direction that Sam went, and I got too caught up on it being a super flex, and I need a second quarterback. Sam's third or fourth running back will probably outscore a third of the starting quarterbacks on a given week. If you look at the bottom tier quarterbacks that because in a super flex, I mean, it looks good to have 2, but if you're relying on Ryan Fitzpatrick or Tua or Gardner Minshew or Trevor, like a really kind of, you don't know what you're going to get from him, but you can plug in an Austin Eckler and probably get a guaranteed low 20s, mid 20s PPR performance. That's what I ignored in favor of hurrying up and getting that second quarterback. That's why my depth is so terrible. That's one of the reasons. But I think
a good point there. You make a good point. In part of my studying, what I found was, so you have the top 25 scores in a given week, right? And there's a stat, 8 or more games in the top 25. I think there are 14 running backs, 10 receivers, and 8 quarterbacks that fall into that camp. So the top end quarterbacks are obviously getting a ton of points, but there's a lot of quarterbacks that aren't cracking the top 25 half the season. and that's a big deal. So we'll see. But yeah, he obviously, and I'm looking at his team now. Who is Stephon Diggs? I've never heard the name in my life, but he's apparently like God's gift to wide receivers.
He could be number one wide receiver pretty easily this year, yeah.
Yeah, they're projecting 405 points there. That's massive at wide receiver. That's what really pushed him over the line there. Next up, we have our friend from New Zealand who got an 88. He is a 76 on the starting lineup, which is fairly beatable, but he's 100 on the bench.
Wow.
So he's got a formidable lineup and an awesome bench. He's going to be a competitor, definitely over 500 team. And he's not alone on the number 88 slot, as Pharaohs came in at 88 as well. With a different mix, 95 starter, 81 bench. So a harder team to beat with the starters, but maybe more susceptible to injury. Either way, both of those teams are going to the playoffs, I think. I think all three of those top three, Pharaohs, New Zealand, and Islands, have got a playoff ticket if they don't, bungle the season. Everybody else, it's a knife fight in the phone booth there in the middle.
Yeah. It makes me really take a look at my lack of depth. I'm kind of looking at it closer now, and man, it is.
So you said Pharaohs was number one. You said Pharaohs was number one, correct?
Well, Pharaohs and New Zealand are tied at 88.
Okay, go ahead, Alan, with your question. Sorry.
Oh no question. I was lamenting my lack of depth as I actually sit here and look at my team. I am one of those teams that drafted. I was so obsessed with quarterback, man. I drafted five quarterbacks. My number one quarterback has a problem with his shoulder, which I'm sure doesn't even get factored into these power rankings, that Dak is hurt again. So, yeah, I did not have the draft I wanted to have.
I'll put it to you this way. I just looked at your team. Running back is what kills you. Your running back core is expected to underscore CMC alone for the whole year.
Yeah.
Now I want something to kind of like follow up with you on this.
Yeah.
Alan knows this because we've drafted teams together. I'm a big believer in handcuffing running backs. So some of my bench is specific handcuffs. I know there's probably no way to factor that in, because, you draft a running back and you draft his backup and the projected points are significantly going to fall off, Is there anything that you answer that? Sorry, I guess.
Yeah. So that's factored into the bench. So the way that this bench thing is scored is we take the top 15 players, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of your bench players. So let's say your top running back goes down. Because of all the flexes in this league, you're going to get your next best player in. Now, if that's the handcuffed running back, he's going to make it onto the field and you're going to play him. But you also might have a wide receiver that's projected for 200 points for the year, but you might say, hey, this running back, they're going to run a different offense because he's not as good as the other guy. So let me put the receiver in instead. This factors all that in. If your backup running back is really good, he's going to be on the field. Otherwise, you're running that wide receiver, quarterback, whatever it is that you get into that slot. So I'm looking at your top 6 performers. The reason I did that is most teams beyond their top 6 have almost no points. We're talking like sub 120 projected for the year after your 6th bench player is the average number 7 player, probably 120. That's not even 10 points a week. Like we can throw that out and just look at those top 6 at that point. I feel pretty confident in adding that up. And again, remember the bench accounted for about 20 to 25% of that value. So to your point, Tony, if you've got that handcuffed running back and it's projected that he's going to do well when the other guy goes out, you're getting credit for that.
Good system.
do you have any questions or anything? Or anything, if you want to wrap up, my wife just got home. She wanted me to help unload groceries for like 30 minutes.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, dude, thanks for taking the time. Like I said, we'll do this again and get into the future baseball league and really whatever else we want to get into. I like making these a little bit more frequent. I like getting you guys on here and having it not just be me. So this was really good hour, really, really cool work you put into both the baseball and football side. Just gives another glimpse into like how ridiculous the ABL is when you have guys sitting around in their home office running simulations of the league to stretch out for X amount of years and looking at the standard deviation of deep minor league ownership percentages and stuff. Like I said earlier, man, when I was bitching about that hockey league, that guy thinks he is the big league. We are the big league. Okay, we are the big league.
You have no idea, Sam. I'm in this hockey league without you have no idea what this guy thinks of himself. It's crazy.
This big,
And let's just go kudos to Duke for a minute, because this guy could be an arrogant asshole, and instead he's just an asshole. Yeah. And for him to just be as cool and chill and let us have ownership without walking all over him. He certainly stands up when he needs to stand up and do the best thing for the league, but he lets everybody kind of do their thing. Yeah, man, every contract league I've been in, I'm no longer in because the GM or the LM or whatever is a narcissist. And it's always a problem with him and his team, and a rule that he makes or a rule that he changes, and it's like, I'm not doing this, So I really appreciate Mike in that way, for sure. He's definitely a very fair man. So.
I think that's as good a spot as any to.
That's
go ahead, Tony. Sorry.
Sign off. I was just gonna say that is a great spot to sign off. Hopefully, you see some of you in the poker room if you're watching, or if we want to get that done.
I may or man, Tony, you are just falling apart here. Yeah, man. I may be in poker. I may not.
Oh, sorry. How about I go like this? Is this better?
I just muted his mic.
Nice.
So Tony, if you can hear me, I muted your mic. Yeah, you're gone. Yeah, you're out of here. All right, you are out of here. All right, man. Thanks a lot, Sam. We'll talk to you again soon. And
all right, take care, Alan.
Have a good night.